Okay, so it is Wednesday, and we are starting segment number 3 for grammar. So let's get right into it.
A compound sentence is made by joining two independent
I'm sorry. So we're going to start with a review of what we learned yesterday. Okay?
clauses with a coordinate conjunction. A complex sentence is made by joining a dependent clause with an independent clause. A subordinate conjunction at the beginning of a clause makes it dependent.
Okay, just as a quick reminder, complex sentences have two clauses. Now, a clause has a subject and a verb. Some of those clauses are independent and they make sentences. Some clauses are dependent or subordinate and they need a conjunction and a connection to another clause. And then you really have two different ideas that are being connected, but they're whole ideas. One of them just has to have help. That's why it's called dependent or subordinate.
Don't worry if you haven't caught on quite yet. Surely English will provide you with plenty of opportunities to master this concept. Follow along as I read through the student tip. Use the following information as a visual aid to help you construct complex sentences. If I were you, I would create a poster with this exact information. Here are the two ways to create a complex sentence. A dependent clause followed by a comma plus an independent clause equals a complex sentence. If you choose to use this strategy to create your complex sentence, don't forget to place the comma after the dependent clause. Independent clause plus dependent clause equals complex sentence. A complex sentence is formed when a dependent clause is joined to an independent clause. A complex sentence can be punctuated in one of two ways. First, a comma is needed when the dependent clause comes first. Notice where the subordinate conjunction is. It's attached to the dependent clause. Second, a comma is usually not needed when the independent clause comes first. Did you notice that this subordinate conjunction separates the independent clause from the dependent clause without adding any extra punctuation? Now,
Okay, we're going to pause right there, and I want you to go back,
adding any extra
and
punctuation.
I want you.
Now, let's take some time punctuation. Now,
I am
let's
really
take some
sorry
time
about this today.
separates the independent
It
clause.
paused. Okay, I'm really sorry about that. I want you to actually make this poster. Okay, this is actually your grade for today. Instead of taking a quiz, you're going to make a poster. You need this information on your poster. I'm also going to have you write down an example of a fragment as well. So kind of be prepared for that. Leave enough room on your poster. Then take a picture of your poster and send it to me. Okay? All right, here we go.
From the dependent clause without adding any extra punctuation. Now, let's take some time to go through reference 107 to learn about fragments. A fragment is labeled capital F. A fragment is a group of words that does not express a complete thought. It is missing either its subject, its predicate, or both the subject and predicate. A dependent clause is also a fragment because it does not express a complete thought. Let's read through each of the examples. Fragment: a large herd of cattle. Could you tell that we were missing the predicate?
So you're missing the verb there. A large herd of cattle. There's no verb. There's no predicate. So you can't do anything with it. It's just not a complete thought.
When you add the predicate to this fragment, and it makes complete sense. You then have a sentence. A large herd of cattle grazed peacefully. Take a look at the fragment in the next example. Barked at the squirrel.
Okay, again, you're missing the subject, which is a noun or a pronoun.
It's pretty clear that we're missing the subject in this fragment. When you add the subject to the fragment, and it expresses a complete thought, you now have a complete sentence. Our dog barked loudly at the squirrel. The next fragment reads, in the park. What do you think it's missing? If you said it's missing the subject and predicate, you're right. In this example, we will add the subject we to the fragment. Did you notice that we had to add the simple predicate, which is the verb, played, to the fragment in order for this sentence to express a complete thought? Now our complete sentence reads, we played in the park today. The last fragment reads, when Tim scored a goal. What do you think is missing in this fragment? This is a dependent clause, and it's missing a complete thought. When you add the independent clause to the dependent clause, it makes much more sense. Let's read it. The crowd cheered when Tim scored a goal.
Okay, notice that when your dependent clause comes at the end, you don't need a comma. Okay?
Reference 108 will help us identify types of sentences.
Okay, before you do this, create your own examples of a fragment to add to your poster and explain what they're missing. You can simply explain by writing missing subject or missing predicate or missing subject noun or pronoun or missing verb. Okay, any of those will work. Okay, or if you're missing both, right, missing both a subject and a predicate. Okay, but I want to see a made up fragment, which should be kind of fun to do. Okay, wouldn't it be fun if we talked in fragments in the box on the house at the ceiling, right? It's just kind of weird.
Adding the complex sentence. Use the following information as a visual aid to help you construct different types of sentences. Notice we have the sentence type, an example, and a quick view that recognizes the parts of speech. The first sentence type is a simple sentence.
Okay, we've already covered most of these. The only thing that we're adding to this is the complex sentence. Now, we haven't done a whole lot with compound sentences, but complex sentences we have. Okay, remember a complex sentence has two thoughts that are connected by a conjunction.
Remember to abbreviate it with a capital S. Remember, a simple sentence has a subject and a verb and a complete thought. Read the example with me, please. Jack jumped. The quick view shows us the core parts of the simple sentence.
Okay, Jack, I want to know, did you really jump? Oh, sorry, off track.
Jack is the noun, jumped is the verb. Notice that they are both color-coded as well. The next sentence type is simple sentence with compound subject. Remember to label it capital SCS. Please read the example of the simple sentence with compound subject. Jack and Jill jumped.
Okay, did anybody actually see Jack jump? Huh? I didn't. I'm not sure he did.
Take a look at the quick view. It's labeled NNV. Remember, if it's compound, you will have either two nouns or two verbs. In this example, we have two nouns, Jack, Jill, and our verb is jumped. Next we have simple sentence with compound verb. It's labeled capital SCV. Let's read the example together. Jack jumped and shouted.
Okay, I'm sure Jack shouted. I'm not buying that he jumped.
The quick view shows us that we have one noun and two verbs. Our two verbs in this example are jumped and shouted. The next sentence type is the compound sentence. It's labeled capital CD. Remember, a compound sentence is created when you join two independent clauses. For example, Jack jumped and Jill shouted.
Now, I can also see Jill shouting, although I don't know any Jills, really, so maybe not.
Notice the quick view. It shows us that we have two simple sentences, each with a noun and a verb, but they are separated and joined by a coordinate conjunction and a comma. The CC stands for coordinate conjunction. Take a quick look at the student tip, please. Again, CC equals coordinate conjunction in a compound sentence. The next sentence type is a complex sentence. Remember to label it with capital CX. A complex sentence is created when you join an independent clause to a dependent clause. Look at the example and read it with me, please. Jack jumped when Jill shouted.
All right, now this probably should say Jack jumped when Mr. Belli shouted. That would make sense, and I could see Jack jumping then.
When you look at the quick view for the complex sentence, you can see that the red capital SC is representing the subordinate conjunction that is attached to the dependent clause. Remember, capital SC will stand for subordinate conjunction in a complex sentence. The last sentence type is a fragment. In this example, you'll see that the fragment is missing a verb. Fragments are labeled with a capital F. Let's read the fragment together. When Jill shouted. Because we are missing the verb in this example, the quick view is incomplete.
Which goes to prove Jack didn't actually jump because Jill shouted, and there's no Jill in our class. Okay, so we're going to stop here for today, or not for today, for this segment, and then we will proceed in the next segment with the rest of the lesson. Okay, sorry, Jack, I couldn't resist.